Hey guys, and welcome back to the 1v1 podcast. I am your host, Vlhadus, and today I am joined by an awesome individual. She is one of the officers in AXIOM that I'm in, or the guild that I'm in, of course, and her name is Kat. How's it going?
Hello, I am good.
So I honestly, yeah, you are the first girl on the 1v1 show.
What?
Yeah, you're on the
Trailblazer.
I know. I'm trying. Well, it's like my quota for female male ratio is like really lopsided. So I'm trying to get that in.
Wow,
You know,
so flattering.
no, I mean I am on. I am trying to talk to a lot of my accent people because I think one of the biggest like benefits for me is like the people in Axiom are just so first of all nice to talk to. They're actually like intellectually smart individuals, not just about stuff, but mostly about gaming, especially MMOs. There's so much history and so much knowledge that a lot of the people at Axiom have. And so, like, especially with you, like, I mean, you have talked about Guild Wars 2, which we'll go into in probably a little bit, but basically, like, I just want kind of like my community to get to know you a little bit, like as a gamer and stuff like that. So, like, how long have you been gaming? Like, what's your MMO history like? Let's start off with those first little nuggets.
Okay. I mean, I've been gaming probably since I was like 5. My dad bought us a Sega Genesis, and I remember playing like Road Rash and the old X-Men
Oh
games and
my
Sonic the
god.
Hedgehog.
Yes,
Yeah,
my friend had Road Rash. She had that one. Friday the 13th. Um, he had Sonic, of course, and he had what was another Sega game that he had that we used to play. Oh my god, I can't think of it. It's
yeah.
been
I
so
don't
long.
remember all of them,
I know
but
it's been
yeah,
so long.
yeah. And then it transitioned from that into like the PS1 and then PS2, which was like the greatest generation of console ever. Um,
Preach.
yeah.
It's true.
And then I didn't really get into PC gaming until my dad actually bought me a gaming laptop. He caught on to the fact that I obviously really enjoyed playing video games, and he got me a gaming laptop for Christmas one year. And the first game he bought me was actually Dragon Age Origins when it had first came out, which started my obsession with the early BioWare games, got me back into things like Baldur's Gate, and then I played KOTOR and some of their other titles. And um, I didn't get into MMOs actually until I was in college, mostly because the only MMO I even knew about was World of Warcraft,
I was gonna,
and I
I was gonna
felt
say.
guilty. Yeah, I felt guilty asking my parents to pay for a WoW subscription, so I just never asked them like, to do that so I could play it. So it
I
wasn't until college that I, coughed up the money to start playing MMOs, and it actually was Lord of the Rings Online that I played first because it was
oh.
free, and I'm a Tolkien nerd through and through. So when I saw
Mm.
that there was an MMO out for Lord of the Rings, I was like, "Oh, well, duh, of course I'm gonna play that." And I played it. I played it actually daily, pretty hardcore for about 3 years straight. I still talk to the people and the friends that I made and the kinship that I was in. We had like our own competitive raiding group back when raids existed in that game, and that was just kind of how I got started. And then I
Wow.
met my husband, and he got me into WoW for a
Wait,
short time.
did you met your husband in game?
No, no, no. Well, I
Oh,
met him
okay.
online, but it was a dating website. We met
Oh,
on
okay. Because I
Match.com.
was like, because hey, there's some
Close
couples
enough.
that get together from MMOs. Like
Oh
that's
yeah, yeah,
definitely not unheard of.
yeah. It wasn't a video game, but it was online for sure.
Okay.
There was some PvP involved.
Oh.
But
Oh.
but yeah, we met online on a dating website, and we both had the same hobbies, which is gaming, and we both played the launch of SWTOR together. He tried multiple times to get me in a WoW, but I think the first time I touched it was Cataclysm. Didn't like it. Didn't like it in Mists of Pandaria. So I think I only played it for like 2 months, and then I tried again in Warlords of Draenor. Still didn't like it, and then Legion came out, and I played the entirety of Legion. I did
Yes.
not stop playing WoW for all of Legion. Best expansion ever. And then it was like maybe, and I got involved in like mythic rating and doing high keys and mythic plus. Like I got really hardcore into WoW
Wait,
and
what?
Legion. Yeah, we joined like we joined a hardcore mythic rating guild and we raided like 3 or 4 times a week and got some
Wow.
got a couple of cutting edges in there and then
Okay, just okay, just so I can preface, I'm actually learning too, guys. Like, so me and Kat have had numerous conversations about like Guild Wars 2, MMOs, and stuff like that. But I honestly did not know that bit of information. Like, I know you did play WoW, but I just didn't know you were that like hardcore, like going all the way to the mythic level and doing high end keys. That's nuts. Because not everybody can do that. Like, people would like to do that, but not everybody can do that. Is the point?
well, yeah, I mean, a lot of it is that my husband is really, really, really good at video games, and so I
Mm,
obviously was like tagging along with him. He wanted to play competitively, I wanted to play with him, and
right.
so we both chose a guild that we thought we both would like that was going to do mythic rating, and I was playing a hunter. Now I think I started out playing a druid, but they didn't need a druid; they needed a ranged DPS, and so I swapped to playing a hunter because I hate standing still and casting abilities. I hate it.
Oh
so I
my
was like
god.
so I was like, what can I play that's ranged that require that where I can still move around? And he's like, play a Beastmaster. And I'm like, perfect. So I played a
Yep.
Beastmaster for like all of Legion.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, Legion and coming as a 15-year WoW vet, World of Warcraft Andy, whatever the hell you want to call me, Legion to me was probably the single greatest experience of an expansion. I mean, people like to always mention like the old days and stuff like that, and mind you, they were great at the time. But honestly, like for me, I completely agree with you. Like Legion is probably the best expansion World of Warcraft has ever done. Like it really is. The cadence of the patches was amazing. They were like, I think every 77 days there was new content, and there was so much content to do across
Oh,
all the
absolutely.
classes with like the artifact weapons and like the class mounts was one of them. I mean, the only I think major contention was the legendary acquisition in the beginning of Legion. But once like the end of the expansion or like towards the end of the expansion, like it was great because now you can just buy legendaries, whatever legendary you don't have, you can just get it. And it really, really took, and
Yeah, I mean that right there was my only gripe with the whole expansion was the
right.
legendary stuff. Like
I
the
think
class
everybody's
order
was.
halls. Yeah, the class order halls is a slam dunk.
Yep.
That was amazing. Like, that made me want to play alts because of
Yep.
the class order hall campaigns. The class identity in Legion was, I think, what really made the expansion. It just made it so cool to play a warrior. It made it so cool to be a mage. Like, you just really felt immersed in your character throughout the expansion. Like, that was the theme. And it just, I don't know, like I just loved being in the game. It just felt really good to be there. It felt good to do the content. Mythic Plus was brand new, and so it was like awesome and exciting. The raids were solid. I mean, the raids are always solid, so
The
it's not
raids
really
were
saying it.
really hard in Legion. Like,
Oh yeah,
I mean,
Kill Jaden.
Tomb of
We
Sargeras,
never
bro, Tomb of Sargeras,
we never got Kill Jaden. We never got that cutting edge.
bro. That
That defeated us.
yeah, I know, but I mean, what was it? Nightwell? No, why am I blanking on the name? The one
I
from
know what you're talking
Suramar.
about. Yep, the Suramar raid.
God,
Knight something.
Night
Yeah.
something, yeah, with Gul'dan and stuff like that. I love that raid.
Ooh,
Like,
Gul'dan was a fun fight. Yeah.
dude, yes, and even the first raid with the man Emerald Nightmare. Golly, like I believe me, guys, I did play WoW for a long time, but I haven't played in like a long time. The names are escaping me now. But Emerald Nightmare was actually, in my opinion, one of the first, because the first raids for WoW expansions are usually really boring and dull. Like if you remember Warlords of
Yeah.
Draenor, Highmaul, like
I was bear tank for Ursoc. That
oh
was
yeah,
that was so much fun.
dude, I'm
As a
telling you,
tank, like
it
I
was
was so
good.
stressed the whole fight. Like that was the most stressful tanking I ever did, but I just had a massive shit ton of health as a bear druid at the time, and so I could just take those big old chunks,
Oh, I know.
you know.
Yeah, no,
Oh, it was so satisfying.
yeah, I loved Emerald Nightmare. I mean, honestly, every raid, even on Taurus, like on Taurus was super solid, man. Like I loved every single raid that came out of that expansion. Um
Yeah, it's just hard to think about. Legion and everything they did right, and then you think about day 1 of Battle for Azeroth, and you're just like, "What the hell, man?"
I
Like,
know it's
the worst thing about Blizzard is that they come out with these great things. There's always something in every expansion, right, that has been awesome, like an innovative feature or a new direction that they went that, was just like a home run, and then they abandon it the second they do a new expansion, and I can't it just sucks. That's what sucks about WoW. They abandon things that are great, and I don't know why they keep doing that. And now there's just nothing left, in my opinion. There's just nothing left for them to do. All
no.
the good stuff they've just buried.
Well, I agree. The game hasn't expanded. Like in my opinion, like I think every single expansion has been its own mini game within World of Warcraft. Like you can still visit like the original world and you can still do things like that, but you're never doing anything meaningful in a past expansion. Like unless you're transmog getting or mount runs or whatever, but for the most part you play the expansion, not the game. You know what I mean? And to me, I never like that, and I don't think a lot of players never like that either. Like Warlords of Draenor may get its flack, but honestly, if Legion would have done the questing like Warlords of Draenor, and then if it also would have taken the legendary acquisition to Shadowlands in Legion, Legion would have been the perfect expansion. Because in my opinion, Warlords of Draenor had the best questing of any expansion, hands down. I mean, I don't know if you said you did play Warlords of Draenor, but
Yeah,
the
I did. I remembered it being fun for sure.
yeah, the cutscenes, just the overall story quest, the narrative, like everything was just so good. But again, the main feature of that expansion, the garrisons, just fell flat. And because it fell flat, they're like, well, let's just abandon it. Like people have been wanting like some type of player housing, and you're literally going to abandon the only hope we have and not try to integrate that into like the actual game and not just have it die into its expansion. Like that's what I don't understand from Blizzard. And it's like they learned all these amazing lessons from Legion and then they decided to make Battle for Azeroth. It almost felt like a whole other team created that expansion, like Battle for Azeroth, compared to Legion. And
Yeah.
it's just, I don't know if you know this, but there's like a little tidbit of Disney. But Disney actually back in the 90s had two working teams. And there was like Team A and then there was Team B. And Team B usually came up with a lot of like the hits of Disney. Like they created Aladdin, what was it? Not Cinderella, Aladdin, Pocahontas, um The Lion King, and then you had like Team A, which was supposed to be like the good, like all the good stuff. Like I forgot what they created, but basically like there was just two teams, and usually Team B did it way better than Team A. I don't know if World of Warcraft has
I
that
know.
now, but
I think they do. Like, I've heard that they do have 2 teams, like, one team's working on the next expansion while the current team is maintaining the content, which makes sense, right? If they wanna pump out expansions every 2 years,
right.
and that's why I was so excited for Shadowlands, because I was like, "Oh, man, this is
So
the
was
team that did
everybody.
Legion. This is the team that did Legion, like, this is gonna be a great redemption, it's gonna be fun," and I was so excited. I thought that the Covenant system was, sort of an attempt at, class order halls, right? And they were gonna continue on with that theme, just in a different way. And I don't know, man. I The raid was fantastic. Castle Nathria was awesome. That was a
It was a
great
good
raid.
raid. We were just in
But
it for too long, but it was a great raid.
yeah, but everything else about I don't know. Everything else fell flat for me. I was just sorely disappointed. I maybe my expectations were too high because again, it was the same team that did Legion, and so I just thought that we were gonna finally get something good, and I was gonna be playing this expansion right the whole way through. But then we had geez, I don't even remember the name of the raid because I think we only went in there twice for the second raid that released that expansion, and then after that we were done. Like we just didn't want to play anymore.
Right. I mean, I think for me it was this just playing for a game for 15 years and like I've told you, the atmosphere that I was in my guild And then of course with the July 2021, which was basically the allegations and all of the news articles coming out from Activision Blizzard, that was kind of like, it wasn't like a tipping point for me. It was actually just a kind of crazy coincidence because I was already wanting to quit like very early July. And then like I was like, well, I already paid for this month. I might as well just fucking keep playing. And then towards the end of the month is when all of the allegations came out and everybody basically just, you know, like screw this. Like, and I basically was gonna quit anyway. And I was like, after all these allegations, I was like, I don't want to fucking do this. Like, I
Well,
don't,
yeah, I mean,
I just
it
no.
made the choice pretty easy for people who are already like kind of on the edge or bored with it in a way. And yeah, I mean, I definitely put the game down probably several months before the allegations even came out. But
Mhm.
when it all did come to light, I was like, well, I wasn't planning on going back to the game anyway. So,
It's
but I
just
mean, in terms
yeah.
of parallels, though, like I'm gonna bring up Guild Wars 2 here, but like one of my biggest gripes with WoW is obviously abandoning, the best parts of the game every time they do a new expansion. And paralleling that with Guild Wars 2, Guild Wars 2 is a game that I have played since beta. I never stopped playing it. I've maybe put it down for short periods if I got invested in something else for a little while, but I've always come back to that MMO. And the one thing that I have really appreciated about that game is that ArenaNet has always taken the stance of um, lateral progression, um, where they never abandon the features of previous expansions or previous content patches. They're just kind of like adding features on top of each other. Your character progression is permanent. Things that were relevant in their very first Heart of Thorns expansion, people are still farming it to this day, going to the old maps, giving players a reason to go to everywhere in the world, by keeping the content alive there, which is I think unprecedented in most MMOs. I think that's the one thing that Guild Wars 2 has that no other MMO has accomplished, which is they have tried really hard and I would say mostly succeeded in making sure that their old content isn't completely dead. Like they've tried to bring players back to it, make it rewarding, um, give people reasons to go back for story content and stuff like that. And it's really impressive to see maps that have been around for like 6 years at this point, and you still see like 100 players farming the map or doing the meta. Like that's always been super cool to me, and it's just a travesty that a successful MMO like WoW has continued to abandon like the best parts of itself.
Right. I mean, you if I were to literally probably log into WoW and go to Vashir, I'd probably be the only person in that zone. You know, if I were to go to, and I know probably Vashir is probably like a very obscure example, but you go to a lot of these places in past expansions, and there's probably zero people there. And because there's no reason to be, and the game's been out for so long, like I feel like they have to continue with their model of just rinse and repeat, keep people in this new expansion. The old, like anything past that is a relic. It's like a museum at that point. Like
Hmm.
we have all this other content that you can do for funsies. You know, it's not like meaningful at this point, but if you're bored and you want something to do, maybe you can go do some of those old quests or get some transmog or get some mounts. Like it just doesn't feel good though. Like it's I don't know. And I really hope because Steven is making Ashes of Creation in a way, especially from the beginning, if he can create a really solid foundation and have a good idea of what an expansion is for Ashes of Creation, and what is it to what is it to expand this particular MMO? Because sometimes like I feel like certain people or certain gaming companies feel like they need this like big feature, this big thing, but honestly like I don't think that that's necessarily what people are looking for. I think it's just more content. Like, and a feature doesn't necessarily mean more content. A feature could be something you're totally uninterested in, and that brings no content to you. I feel like story beats and kind of like reconstructing the world in a way where old areas still matter and are still relevant to your story and your narrative. I think Final Fantasy 14 does a really good job of actually making you go back to old zones that you once were at. Um, to kind of whether it's to solidify a storyline or maybe it's because of character development or something along those lines. I like that. I like that kind of like this land is still relevant even 2 expansions later. You
I
know,
mean, that's how you get a world to feel like it's alive, is,
right,
like, Vera the world of Vera should be evolving over time, right? And it's the developers are putting all this time and talent and effort into crafting this piece of art, right? Like this world that we're going to be exploring. And to as a player, I'm fine with the world changing and evolving. Like if the developers want to go back to an old zone and some kind of cataclysmic event, no pun on cataclysm here, but
right,
alters that zone in a permanent way. It's like, I mean, to a degree, for example, in Guild Wars 2, they completely destroyed the original Lion's Arch, which was like the capital city in that game,
right,
and they rebuilt it in a new image. And a lot of people really miss the old Lion's Arch. But I kind of like the nostalgia a little bit of I was there. I remember
right.
old Lion's Arch. I remember hanging out there, going to the auction house. I remember all the shenanigans around the lion fountain and stuff like that. And I go back and I sometimes watch those YouTube videos of, player driven content, right, in that area that we had in the old days. But I can also appreciate the current Lion's Arch, right? Like it looks
Right.
beautiful. It's very well crafted. There are more memorials and stuff that the developers took the time to put in the game, to give you that feeling about old Lion's Arch and stuff like that. So it has like its own charm to it. And
Mhm.
I'm okay. I miss the old Lion's Arch, but I I'm okay with not having it anymore. Like I appreciate that the developers were brave enough to do something like that. Like
Right.
and I'm totally okay in any MMO for developers, if it's true to their vision and it keeps us going back to these old zones for new reasons. I would much rather see that than them say, "Oh, here's a new continent that you didn't know about before." It's like, "Oh, well, the current continent's already huge and has a ton of stuff to do, so I'd kinda like to stay here. Like, this is where all my
Right.
stuff is. This is where all my friends are. This is where my node is at," like, give me reasons to stay and keep cultivating the world
That
that
we're
you
living
made
in.
for me here. Yeah.
And my whole thing with that too is that if you look at realistically, right? 1980 San Antonio, where I live, is completely different from 2022 San Antonio. And I think we're so used to MMOs being very stagnant. The village will be the village and never expand. This place will always be this place and never expand. That to me is very unrealistic. Like if a people are settled in an area for more than 10 years, chances are it's probably going to be bigger 10 years later. Like they're going to add something. They're going to add a convenience store, a supermarket, a school, whatever the case is, right? So in MMOs, we're always so used to like a cataclysmic event, right? But sometimes it doesn't need to be cataclysmic.
Nope.
Sometimes like you go into a zone that used to be kind of bare, and then oh shit, there's a new building there. That's nuts. Oh, now there's like this other
Yeah.
thing. And I think that's the whole appeal with the node system. Uh in Ashes right off the get-go, right? The whole foundation, the pillar of Ashes of Creation is the node system and its ever evolving node structure, going from tier 0 to tier 6. And I think it would be really cool if an expansion uh didn't really add a new zone, but yet added within the zones that were already there. I'm not saying you can't add like a little small area somewhere else, like you know what I mean? Like, but it doesn't that area doesn't need to be the single pivotal reason of why this expansion exists. It could just be an area that we discovered. Or maybe it was an area that just came out of nowhere. Like that just appeared out of
Yeah.
nowhere. You know what I mean? Like there could be multiple different reasons. But that's
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, that's just my whole reason of why I'm so excited for Ashes, because I think it's going to give players something different and ever changing. And we're going to be used to changing Ashes compared to other MMOs where we're used to it staying the same, right? We're used to no change. Like, don't change this. Like,
Yeah, and some of the things that I hope to see is, if there's a certain part of the world, for example, that the developers have noticed that players like to congregate at, right? That's where they like
Mhm.
to do their farming or gather resources or whatever. And then just out of the blue, the devs are like, let's just put a little drought there for a couple of weeks, and then
Right.
all of a sudden this lush land is now, barren and desert, and everyone's like, what the heck? Now I can't farm my stuff here. And the devs
Right.
disrupt the economy, right? They're
Right.
trying to drive players away, make them go do other things. And so just for a temporary period or a period that we aren't, aware of how long it'll last, right?
Right.
And they just throw that in the game. And that's just like small things that could change how players interact with the world. And it would be really cool to see the developers just kind of have fun with that, right? Of like, it doesn't have to be on a routine or set schedule or anything, but if they see something in the world and they think, hey, if we do this, it might disrupt things and make things a little interesting for a while. Like
Mhm.
I would love it. I would have fun if the devs were doing that to the players.
Right. I mean, I'm pretty sure Intrepid is probably going to do some of those things like once Ashes does go live. I do want to ask you something, and this is probably something, of course, for you personally. Um, what is like the single most important thing for you when it comes to MMOs? Like, what? I guess that's too much of a general question, but I like what when you're looking at an MMO, what is important to you? Like, what features, what things?
I think it's a combination of many things that all contribute to my relationships with other people. So,
Okay.
like for example, in WoW, the one thing that made me really close to the people I played with was mythic rating, right? It's
Hmm.
challenging. It brought us together. We had fun with it because of that. In Guild Wars 2, it was their world versus world content where I joined a world versus world guild and I got to follow some really amazing shot callers. And every day I would log in and we'd go out and we would get our 40-man raid, right? And then we'd just be roaming around, taking castles, taking keeps, taking towers, doing open field fighting with people. And I enjoyed that content for a long period of time because it facilitated the kind of coordination and camaraderie with the people that I played with in a way that made it very rewarding for me. And I think, and even in Lord of the Rings Online, like a lot of the reason I developed close relationships with people in that game was that the world was just so immersive and fun to be in. And so I was surrounded by people who loved the world as much as I did. And then that's kind of what brought us together. So it's like each MMO that I've played in my life had, to a degree, has had a component of it that has really brought me together with other people, built those relationships. And so my hope for Ashes is to just have a wealth of those features, right? Like the open world PvP, I would like to get a taste of the feeling I had when I played Guild Wars 2, open world bosses or dungeons. I would like to have those same feelings that I had playing WoW. And I want the world to be immersive enough to where the people that I play with are enjoying being in it as much as I am. And just a combination of those things together, it builds community. And the community, I think, is the reason I play MMOs. Um, I didn't play Lost Ark for too long because although it was a fun game and the combat was incredible, there just wasn't a lot about the game that made me want to play with other people. It encouraged you to be solo more than otherwise, and
Right.
I appreciate features in MMOs that do actually encourage me to work with people and make friends and rely on each other and share resources and stuff like that. Arc Age is another game that I played for um, like daily for many, many hours for a good 3 or 4 months, I think, before all the pay to win stuff got introduced to the game. Then I quit. But during that time, my God, the first time we built a trade ship in our guild was like the coolest thing ever. Like that's a memory that I'll always cherish because we're all super excited to be like, "Yeah, our first trade ship in the whole guild. Let's all load up our packs and go across the ocean." Like, that was fun, and that was all around building a ship. Like, that's one
Right.
thing that the game had that brought people together, and we all got super excited about, so,
And I think
yeah, just
no, go ahead.
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Just
Well,
community. I want things that facilitate connections and community.
right. No, I totally understand that. And that's again one big reason why I'm interested in Ashes of Creation is because it is about community and it harkens back to an old time, right? If you think of any old MMO back in like the 2000s, community was so big because of course it needed to be. Like, and community was so important. To meet people was very important. To be in a guild was very important. There was no LFG or LFR system. It was just you shouting in trade or shouting in, you know, like, hey, I need help to do this dungeon, or hey, I don't know where this quest item is, or hey, I need help with this 3 man quest that's read to me, or just all these different things. And Ashes is, I think, gonna harken back to that a little bit, and I'm really really excited about that. I think for me, what I find to be very important to me as an individual is class design. I Because like me trying other MMOs out, if the class design isn't there, I'm not interested. Like, believe me, I wanted to be in Guild Wars 2. People talk so highly about Guild Wars 2, and I'm like, well, man, like, let me download it, let me play it. And the fact that there was a Necromancer class, I'm like, dude, okay. Like, because I love Warlock in World of Warcraft. I mean, that's probably like my second favorite class, like, in that game. So for me to play a Necromancer, I'm like, this is kind of right up my alley. I just like I've told you many times, like
I
I
know.
can't get into the freaking weapon ability tie-in thing. Like, and the fact that like the heart quest thing in believe me, like maybe
Well, nobody likes the heart quest.
I know, but it's like, well, how do you quest then? Like, how do you
You
go and
don't.
what do you mean
You
you
don't. You
don't?
don't quest in Guild Wars 2. I know, it gets a lot of people. It's very,
Oh,
what's what's the term? Like, it's
it's
it's not what people are used to. It's not very theme park MMO. It's,
no, it's not.
it's different and it confuses people and it turns people off because they're like, "Well, I can't level in this game. I don't understand how to get XP." And
Right.
when you tell them do map completion, they're like, "What the hell is that, and why would that excite me?" I'm like, I don't know. Get to level 80 and then just get to level 80. I don't know what to tell you."
I mean, just getting to level
But
10 was like an ask for me.
yeah, I mean, I would say it's the one part of the game that is the deciding factor of whether people will continue to play it. But I mean, like most MMOs, I mean, I haven't been able to get into ESO, for example, and just generally speaking, I can't seem to get into Bethesda games. I don't know what it is, but
No, you're not
I just
alone.
can't.
Me and my buddy Robert literally downloaded it and we're like, "Hey, let's play together." That was an experience. Even playing with one other person, it's boring. I am
Yeah,
bored.
and the thing is well, I would say that every MMO I've played, with the exception of SWTOR, um, the leveling experience is extremely boring. The only
Right.
reason SWTOR stands out is because it's so narratively driven
Oh,
that if you're into the
yes.
story, it's fun as hell, and you actually look forward to leveling in that game.
Dude, the Sith
Um,
Warrior quest line is so good. Like where
yeah,
you can be a marauder, or I think what's the other spec you can be? Marauder and
Juggernaut.
Juggernaut. Yeah, I was both. Like I did both, but mainly I was Marauder. That that story was so freaking cool. Like I loved how interactive it is with the story and stuff like that. And I know people have asked Steven or Ashes, is the story going to be like Final Fantasy 14? Is it going to be like SWTOR? And basically, like Cliff Notes wise, I guess to kind of sum it up, it's not going to be like either. Apparently,
That's
from what
that's a
Steven's,
big ask.
well, it is
Yeah.
definitely a big ask, but the what I've seen like on paper, or not on paper, but on my screen from what Intrepid has said, of like the story is going to be node based, and it's going to also be, the quests are going to be node based, And then there's going to be certain things that are going to branch off into other pieces of the story. I don't even know what that means. I don't know if that means that there's going to be story you're going to need to experience in a dungeon. There's going to be story you're going to need to experience in a certain area. Uh, I don't know. The way I kind of see the story from for Ashes being told is similar to classic WoW. I don't know if that's a great idea in my opinion because classic WoW is very segmented like that, right? Like every zone had its own little storyline and quest and stuff like that. I don't know if that's going to particularly be something that people are going to be chomping at the bit to know more about. I think there's going to be certain lore nuts that are going to want to do it and be excited about it. But I think for the most part, people are not even going to read the text quest and just move right on. Like,
Oh
I don't,
yeah, I mean, even in, I mean, there's people who have skipped the story in Final Fantasy and in SWTOR, even though it's like the main
really,
appeal
really,
of the
really
game.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so like there's always gonna be those people for sure. I mean, I'm curious what they're gonna do with it. I'm someone that definitely appreciates a good story, even in an MMO. But I also acknowledge that it is an MMO, and I don't expect another SWTOR or another Final Fantasy. But I definitely don't want more WoW storytelling because that has been weak pretty consistently. The writing's been pretty terrible. The cinematics are the only good thing about the game. From a storytelling perspective, Blizzard has always been very below average to me. So I would hope for something better than that, but not as good as SWTOR or Final Fantasy. I'm okay with in between.
for sure. I mean, I just think it's a shame that if they're putting so much emphasis into this story, that they're just ripping pages out and throwing them against the wind and being like, "Oh, we'll find that story quest somewhere." Like it's like, you know what I mean? Like if you're putting so much emphasis, like wouldn't you want to tell it in a very either thematic way or in a way that isn't going to be confusing or piecemeal? Like that because again, the classic WoW story wasn't told well. Like, I mean, it's actually, if you break down the stories when it's all said and done, they are great. But as you're doing it, it's not really impactful. Like, you're not chomping at the bit to know the next part of the story kind of thing. You know what I mean? Because it's all these quest lines and all these different story bits are just thrown to the wind and you don't really understand it. So, therefore, you don't care. Therefore, you're not invested. So,
Yeah,
I don't know. Like, I would love like a medium. I don't need it to be so narratively driven, but I would love if like similar to Guild Wars 2, like map completion, if there was like a story completion within the zone, like within every area, there's like, hey, there's certain quest lines you haven't done. You may want to try to do those before you move on to the next area. Like, I think something like that might be nice, just so that way you know narratively you've done everything here. You know what I mean?
yeah. I'm a big fan of like a main storyline that kind of gets you through the game, but I
Right.
really, really like it when the side quests kind of lead you to these um, seemingly hidden areas of the map or parts of the map that you otherwise probably wouldn't have gone to explore. Like I love side quests that do kind of take you on these tangents and these obscure parts of the zones. And like I always see it as okay, the developers are trying to lead me to this really cool place that they're really proud to show me. Like
Right.
they put some work into this and they're gonna give me the breadcrumbs so that I don't miss out on it, right? Like they're not gonna put a fucking Easter egg there.
No, right.
They want me to find it, right? And they're gonna drop the clues to get me there or build a quest line around it. Like I will chase those side quests and I will chase those breadcrumbs because I genuinely believe, hey, the devs are leading me to something that they're proud to show me, and I know that I'll appreciate it when I get there.
Well, and again, like I think side quests should be like ripping a page out, throwing it against the wind, and being like, "Hey, hopefully you may find that." Like, because if you're in an area where it is 100% story completion, but then you're going past this weird hole in a wall, like cave, and there's this cloaked, shadowed person, and you're like, "Well, what the hell is that?" You know, and that takes you on this side quest. Like, I don't mind that because again, like that's extra optional story bits that you can potentially get. You know what I mean? But I just don't want the main quest to be also in that format. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's people that are not going to care for the side quest stuff,
For
and they
sure.
just want to blow through the main storyline. So I think the main storyline should always be tailored to those people. But for people like me who will absolutely be completionist about doing the side quests and really enjoying the world, I would definitely be the kind of player that would appreciate that level of effort from the devs.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think of the Hildebrand quest from Final Fantasy 14 like every time when I think of a side quest, because if you, I don't know if you've played Final Fantasy 14, but that quest is a side quest, and it is probably the best side quest I've ever done in any MMO. It is amazing, and it's totally animate out. Like it's super funny, it's outlandish, it's funny. It's just it's good. But I guess to kind of go to your point, like I want to talk a little bit about combat for a second because we just saw that from the recent live stream from Ashes. And do you have any kind of feedback for the team, or like did you like what you saw? Do you think it's the right direction? Did you absolutely hate Steven for hating on Guild Wars 2?
I didn't catch any comments about Guild Wars 2, but
No, because he was talking about the abilities not being tied to weapons, and that's what I was referring to.
oh, I mean, Guild Wars 2 isn't the only game that's done that, but yeah,
No,
I
for
mean,
sure.
overall, I like the direction. The impact, the animation. I love the detail and the synergy that the combat and the art team seem to have. Where like the seeing the scrapes on the ground from the sword, I was
Oh,
like, oh
dude.
my god! Like little nuggets like that sends a very strong message to me that the attention to detail from the development team is there and they really care about how this is going to look. So I'm not going to look too in the weeds on the stuff that they showed to us. Like just as a general feeling, what they demonstrated to me during that live stream is that the care factor is there, the talent is clearly there, the communication between the combat team and the animation team is very strong, and I have full confidence going forward in their ability to design a impactful, satisfying, really cool combat system for us to play around with, and I'm just super excited to see what they come up with in the future.
So, because they are still going forward with the hybrid system, which I'm really excited about. I don't really want them to make a decision one way or the other when it comes to tab or action. I think honestly the way of the future is hybrid. And the reason why I say that is because most people say no, the way of the future is action. I disagree. The reason why I say it's hybrid is because you have to understand, if you're 20 something years old, you probably like action. If you're 35 and older, probably like tab. Now, I'm not saying there's not older people who don't like action. That's probably the case. But I'm saying as a majority, I think there's a lot more tab people than action. But in order to get those tab people comfortable with action, you need a good hybrid system. You need to start, nudging them slowly in that direction. You know what I mean? You can't just rip off the band-aid and say, haha, no more tab system. You just have to use action, because then people aren't going to play that. They're just going to go and play other tab games. But if you have a game that has a very satisfying tab system, but also a very satisfying action system, and it's very naturally blended together, I think we could have a pretty good system in our hands. You know what I'm trying to say? So I don't know how
Yeah,
you
I
feel
mean,
about.
because like
Oh, go ahead.
I I'm not interested in an action mage.
Neither
I'm
am
just
I.
not
No,
like
I'm not either, personally.
or an action healer. Like I tab makes sense for certain classes, and I think the devs have caught on to the fact that like, hey, action, generally speaking, feels great if you're playing a melee class.
Yes.
However, if you're playing a ranged class, then tab target feels significantly better, especially if
Right.
you're a healer, right?
Yes.
Like New World healing was triggering as hell. I hated it.
Abysmal.
All of our
Abysmal.
healers hated it. Like it was just an awful experience all around. And so I think that tab has its place, and I think
Yes.
that action definitely has its place. And I think the devs, they realize that, and I think they're trying to find the perfect blend between the two. Let's use tab where it makes sense. Let's use action where it makes sense. And let's see if we can come up with something unique to where the combat overall feels good. Because if you think about players when they choose a class that they want to play, like someone who wants to play a ranger, for example, you're probably going to get a mix of people who would prefer skill shots over tab shots, right?
Right.
And but for a mage, someone who wants to play a mage, you're probably going to get more people who are interested in a tab target style of combat than an action style targeted combat because it's a
Right.
mage, right? Like they're used to. That's just how most MMOs have kind of treated the class.
Right.
But a ranger should have mobility and be able to move around, and so skill shots make a little bit more sense with that. Like, yeah, I'm curious to see what they come up with. I think they're going to make the right decision at the end of the day because they're going to get good feedback from the alpha testers and stuff. So, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I don't really have much to say. I know I said it in the last 1v1 with Baba, but I what I wanted to hear, I heard because excuse me, talking with Lukel in Discord. Lukel is a member of Axiom. He's also a leadership in Axiom as well. I was because he asked me like, "What are you expecting from this live stream?" And I said, "I just want to hear the devs talking about combat." And I love the fact that every time they go over a system, like whether it was the character creator, the seasonal system, he literally brings on his devs, and even with Unreal Engine 5, um, he brings on the devs that worked on that system to talk about it. And hearing the frame of mind and the position of those devs, everything I heard was a slam dunk for me. Like everything that I heard them say was like, yes, that's what I want you to say. That's what I need
Yeah.
them to say, because I don't really need to say much as far as feedback. That one guy said, I forgot who it was, and I apologize, but he was the one that said, yeah, when we first got our first combat iteration after Alpha 1, it wasn't great. And they're like, well, let's keep reiterating. You know what I mean? And it was just because, again, they're MMO players too. You know, not only are they developing this game, but they understand and know the landscape of other MMOs because they've played them. So they know what feels good to players because they are players themselves. So because of that, I don't really need to worry or um ask for them about this minutia or this, like, you know, tidbits of little micro details that people have been saying in the forums, because I'm pretty sure they know. And they know, yeah, it's not done. I mean, again, like people, in my opinion, expected way too much from this basic live stream. Like people were like, and even Lukel, he was saying like, oh, I expected to see like a little bit of spark come from a rock. And I'm like, well, that's easily addable. And that's a very fine detail in the grand scheme of things. And I think he even said it himself, that that's true. But I think me and you are in safe hands when it comes to combat. And it's like Steven said too, if everything you saw from this live stream, you liked it, then this is the direction we're going. And it's only going to get better because this is the direction we're headed. And so, yeah, I don't really have much to say other than I was very, very happy because for me, I play a lot of ranged. I in WoW, I played everything. I was every specialization. I was a tank, healer, range DPS, melee DPS. I mean, I played it for 15 years. I've done everything in that damn game. But yeah, like, and me seeing healing in New World and also ESO, I don't want that for Ashes at all. It looks terrible. And I think even in ESO they kind of incorporated a more of like a raid unit frame style of healing now in that game, if I'm not mistaken. But the old way of ESO, from what I saw, was it looked just as bad as New World did, in my opinion. So I don't know. Like I Tab definitely does have a place. And even as a mage, I wouldn't be upset if there were certain abilities that were skill based. Now I don't expect all of it to be skill based or positional or, you know, directional or, you know, whatever the case is. But yeah, I do want a kind of blend of, you know, action based abilities and tab based abilities. But as a mage, I just don't want to have a little crosshair where I have to aim everything. You know what I mean? That's my thing.
Hmm.
And even as a ranger, I don't want to have to aim my shots either, like my basic attacks and shit. Like I don't have to worry about that stuff. I want my major abilities to matter. Like, and I don't mean major, I mean like my rotational abilities. Like I want a mix of tab and I want a mix of action. You know what I mean? If I
If
stun this,
I if I
oh, go
have an
ahead.
ability called aimed shot, I want to actually have to aim it.
What? Right. That's what I'm saying. So it's like, and there's going to be those little things that Intrepid's going to have to work on and stuff like that, get feedback. And I'm very excited for when, you know, Alpha 2 starts to start going inside those classes, testing the kits out, testing the talent points out, really diving deep. Because to me, class class identity and just rotational abilities and talent choices of classes is my fundamental reason of why I play an MMO. And I didn't know that until I stopped playing WoW and I started looking elsewhere, because that was the first thing I gravitated to. If the class design, or, there wasn't much for customization of the class, I just I didn't care to play the game. Like, it didn't matter how great the game was to other people. I just had no interest in it. So I really hope that Intrepid nails that down and provides like enough in them to make them really great. But I don't know if you want to talk about the whole 64 class system, because to me, I don't think I don't know if that can work. I really don't. I don't know how that's even expandable in my head, because it's like if you were to add one new class in an expansion, we now have going from 64 to like 72 options or
Yeah,
something like that. Like,
I don't think that the uh, augments are going to be as detailed as people think they will be. And two, if they are planning on them being detailed, I just think it's a bad idea. Um, every MMO on the market right now that's been out for a long time has suffered from bloat when it comes to skills, talents, classes. They've chosen to add so much to the game that it's just impossible to balance. I would very much prefer, when it comes to combat and balancing systems, I would very much prefer for Intrepid to go the safe route, right? And try and keep it tight, not minimalize it, but at least keep it tight where if they have plans for the future to add certain things to the combat system in the game, that it's not going to make the game harder for them to manage. I think that every MMO has fallen into that trap, and I would very much like to see a development team address that problem of what are we going to do when this game is 10 years old and we have too much going on, and
right.
how are we going to prevent that from happening?
To me, I think rotation is important. Like, I love having a really awesome rotation. I don't like the way Lost Ark did it, where you just pushed 8 buttons in whatever order and it doesn't really matter. I mean, it does to a certain extent. I'm not saying there isn't a min max thing, but traditionally, like, the cooldowns were so low that you just hit all your 8 buttons until one hit came off cooldown, then you hit that one next. Like, it didn't feel like anything. Or maybe I was just totally wrong in playing my class. I don't know. But I think to me, a good minimalist point of abilities would be like 10, and then having like up to like maybe 15, maybe 17 abilities, with some cooldowns mixed in. I also feel too that utility should be super limited for classes other than Bard and Summoner. I think Bard and Summoner should be the classes with the utility. Like, you want to have them for utility. And then people are saying, well, man, like, why are we gonna, people are gonna be wanting them in their raids and stuff like that. Well, yeah, like, you want them. Like, if you don't have a bard or a summoner, you're doing it wrong. And that's how I want it to be. Like, I want very little utility for all the other 6 main classes, and have them have the vast of the utility, because I mean, they
Hmm.
are supports at the end of the day, and I really do want them to feel like a true support class. Um, which means they're not going to do the best damage, but they're going to be very important to raid makeup. Like, you're not going to want to pass up a bard or a summoner if you don't have one. Like, you'd be an idiot. So,
Yeah, and the I love support classes. I played
me too.
and most people have not played Lord of the Rings Online, but I played a captain, which is a it's kind of the Swiss Army knife. It can tank, it can heal, it can DPS, but it does none of them fantastically. It can just be a hybrid of what's needed. And
Hmm.
I remember like solo healing dungeons and stuff as a captain, which was fun for me because one, you're not supposed to be able to do that, and two, the only reason I was able to do that was because I built my character specifically to do it, and that was a very fun aspect of playing the class. Was like, wow, like I'm not supposed to be able to solo heal this dungeon as a captain, but I'm gonna figure it out and I'm gonna do it anyway, and that's what made it super fun.
Right. Well, and it's also having that customization to do it. And I understand your point where, if they go super detailed, that's probably also not the way to go with like the augment system for the classes. I kind of want them to. And maybe it's a selfish thing, like because I love customization. I love having different tools at my disposal to use for different scenarios. Um and it doesn't mean utility. It just means like, oh, I want to be more single target based. Maybe I want to be more AoE. Maybe I want to be spread cleave. Maybe I want to have more dots. Like, and the fact that like maybe every class can have up to 20 abilities that you could potentially choose from. But once you allocate talent points, stuff like that, you may end up between anywhere from 10 to 15. So you're not going to be able to choose everything that's available to your kit, because like I think that would also be really cool, because sometimes there's some abilities you just don't need for a particular situation. So having that laterality to be like, even though I have 20 abilities at my disposal for what I'm doing maybe this week or today or whatever, I only need 11 abilities or 14 abilities. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Mhm.
I think having that level of customization is really nice. And I know people, well, talking to people from Axiom, they don't want it that way. They want to have your choices matter and you be stuck with those choices and you can't like unchange them for like a week or something like that. I kind of disagree. I think you shouldn't be able to just change them willy nilly at any point in time. But I think if you're in a safe zone or like your node in or whatever, you should be able to change your talents if you need to. Like if you're just going out doing questing, have your quest, build. If you're doing dungeons, do your dungeon build. You know what I mean? Like I don't think limiting and being like, oh, well, I'm spec'd for, this, so I can't really help out efficiently. Like, well, that kind of sucks. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just think, again, Ashes is very hardcore in certain areas. I just don't think we always need to have that attitude for everything. I think, especially for class design, we need to allow for more flexibility. I'm not saying ultimate flexibility, but, certain bits of flexibility. So I don't know what your stance is on that point or at all.
I mean, I do an inward eye roll when I hear the phrase, "Oh, I want my choices to matter," and I'm like, I mean, I don't know. That it just feels like such a soft take to have on combat. Like, what does it even mean? I guess is my problem. Like, what do you mean by that? What do
Right.
you mean by meaning? Like what is it that you're not getting out of MMOs? Because like, I've had fun with the combat systems in almost every MMO I've played, mostly because the combat system is they've done something deliberate with it. There's a specific style that they went for. They owned it. It's how they designed all their classes around it, and I've found a way to have fun with just about any combat system. It's like World of Warcraft is tab target to the max. Like there's no action in it hardly at all, but I still managed to find a class right that I enjoyed and have fun with the game still. And like Guild Wars 2, I have fun with.
All right. Sorry about that, guys. There's gonna be a little break in that because apparently my memory got full. So while Kat was talking. Um but yeah, Kat, I mean, no, I do get what you were saying. And I think with class design for a lot of games, it's been good for the game, you know what I mean? Like overall. I just think for Ashes specifically, like there needs to be a little bit more flexibility than I hear people saying about Ashes. And again, I think it's because there's just this mentality of the game's hardcore, so we need hardcore people in our game, you know what I mean? But at the same time, we need casuals too. You know what I mean? And casuals love flexibility. You know what I mean? I love flexibility and I'm a hardcore person myself. So I don't know. I think all in all, um, we're going to get a lot of divisive feedback for Alpha 2. And I don't know how the dev team is going to handle that because yeah, cuz I know I'm going to say my spiel about it. And I know other content creators are going to say their spiel about the way combat's going or about certain systems, and people are going to say these systems are too hardcore. I'm going to be like, well, maybe they're just fine, or maybe they need to be even more hardcore, or maybe certain hardcore systems need to be more like flexible and less stringent. um but yeah, I don't know. I pray for the devs to figure all of that out to hopefully not be a complete shit show. But
Yeah, man, and to go back to what you said earlier, like I care about the team that Steven has put together, and like you said before, they're saying all the things that I want to hear, to where I am fine trusting them. Like again, I do see game development as a art process, and when it comes to something like that, I just want to trust that the person who's working on it has the passion and the talent. And I don't s- slight segue, but like that's how I chose my tattoo artist. Like I wanted someone who was good at the style
Right.
of what I wanted from my tattoo, but I wanted it to be their version of it, like,
Right.
and that's kind of how I see MMOs or just video games in general. I want it to be the truest vision of what the developers want to achieve. Like this is a piece of art that they're crafting for us to enjoy. I'm not going to be super nitpicky about it. Like as long as I feel like it's true to what the developers want to achieve with the game, that I will appreciate it. And
Right.
I wish players wouldn't pick apart every little detail, especially at this stage. Like, my God, nothing is complete right now. Like, it really just bothers me, the tiniest little details that people choose to get hung up on right now. It's just like, hey, the game is years away. Calm down. Like, give the devs a chance to like actually hone their craft a little bit more before you have hard opinions on something. But
Well, I think it's the passion. That's the one thing I hear so much in not only Axiom but just in other discords that I hop into to chat with people. People are really passionate about this game, and because we only have it on paper or technically the wiki, and that's what we can only go by. People are left to theory craft and speculate as to the direction of a certain system and how it should be, and and then you take into account of that person's history. Are they a hardcore action person? Are they a hardcore tab target person? Are they a hardcore world PvPer? Are they a casual, pleb that just, wants it to be easy? You know what I mean? There's so many things that I think Intrepid is going to have to basically say no. And I'm really curious of how the community is going to take it, because there's games that are trying to appease everybody, and those games will say yes to everything. If you say this game is not going to be for everybody, that also means you're going to have to tell certain people no and explain why. And we'll see if Steven can do it in a way that's like, you know, and I think he can. He's super articulate. I just feel like certain people are going to be upset and disappointed. And again, this game isn't for everybody. And you can only say that if you can really say no to people. I just hope that the people that say, okay, fine, I'm going somewhere else, isn't like the droves of people that we need to sustain this game, because then visions need to change, because we can't sustain off of like 50,000 people a month. You know what I'm saying?
well, yeah, it's a balance.
Right.
I want the game, right, to be a true vision of what the developers want to achieve here. But from a business perspective, the game still has to make money, and so
Right.
they can't be too far on either side of the spectrum here when it comes to certain features. So, yeah, I mean, it's a balancing act. I mean, I'm sure there's some things that Steven is prepared to maybe cave in on, right? Because there are certain aspects of the game where how the community feels about it is pretty important. Like it's
Right.
like the combat system. It's actually really important how people feel about your combat system, because a lot of people will not play the game or not play it for an extended period of time if they're not having fun with the
Right.
combat. And so they do kind of have to listen to the players on that one. But there's
Mhm.
flavorful things, right, that don't matter. Like I wouldn't listen to players at all. I would just do whatever the hell they think is right. And
Right.
so, as long as Steven is prepared to make those decisions, and he knows where his lines are drawn and where he might have to move the lines a little bit, then I'm confident that they'll be able to toe that line.
Awesome. Well, to kind of cap our conversation, since we're already at, well, I think we're already over an hour, which is kind of nuts because it feels like 5 minutes, but it felt like that with Baba too. Cause like he was just like, wait, what? It's over. But, so I guess my question is, because you've been following the project for how long? Curiously.
I think since the Lazy Peon video came out,
All right.
what was
Since
that, 2020?
2020 July.
29? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there was two of them. He did do one in 2019, and that one did get a pretty good bump. But I think the big bump was the one in 2020. Um, but I guess, you know, why do you believe in this project, like Ashes of Creation?
Just the people that are behind it, and the fact that Steven's paying for it. I mean, he's not beholden to shareholders right now, and
True.
I think that ultimately is what driven has driven a lot of the gaming industry downhill with these, like, very expensive projects, is that the game has to make money, and so the developers have no choice but to put these unsavory systems in the game or these tropes of the industry in the game, in order to appease shareholders, and the fact that we don't have that problem with Ashes of Creation, and I hope we never do. Um, it just gives me confidence that this is a labor of love, and gaming is, my hobby. It's been my passion for a long time, and as long as people are making Ashes of Creation that align with that, then I'm behind the project. Like, I don't want to say I'll be happy with whatever comes out at the end, but I think generally speaking, it'd be pretty hard for them to disappoint me.
Right. Well, Kat, I really appreciate you coming on and having this chat with me. It's always fun talking with you.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Awesome. Well, guys, I really hoped you enjoyed this episode of the 1v1 podcast. I just want to also reiterate that we are now finally on streaming platforms, like, or not streaming platforms. I'm not on Netflix. But I am on like podcasting platforms like Spotify. I think I'll soon be on Apple Music. If I'm not on Apple Music now, I will be soon. Uh Amazon Music or podcast, Pandora. I finally set it up a week ago, so hopefully it'll all start pouring in. It did say anywhere from a week to 2 weeks for certain platforms to accept my podcast. But yeah, guys, it's so if you don't want to watch it on YouTube, it'll be available on a lot of the other podcasting streaming platforms. So go check it out. I'll have them hopefully linked in the description of this video. If you like this video, hey, hit that like button, share it with your friends around Discord and other communities. That'd be very much appreciated. Subscribe to my channel if you're, wanting to hear more on the 1v1s. I have plenty of guests lined up for the future. Again, my name is Vlhadus. This is Kat from Axiom. This is the 1v1 podcast, and we will see you guys in the next one. Later, guys.